Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It takes place at the Tromaville Institute of Technology and its attached nuclear power plant. We're given no explanation as to why a giant squirrel is destroying the place and relieving itself on the cooling towers. Soldiers and plant workers fight back but turn into little action figures before being stepped on while helicopters are eaten out of the sky. Students flee for their lives, which causes chaos and people to crash their vehicles in the most Mad Maxian way they could think of. They cause nearly as much destruction as the kaiju with big nuts who uses its tail to snatch up people and vomits on the crowd. Among the fleeing students is a reporter named Roger carrying out his unconscious girlfriend who's leaking a strange green goo. Victoria's on the verge of death, so instead of going to the hospital, Roger sticks her tongue back in her head and begins recording what led up to these events.
No more trauma movies.
We flash back to a few days ago when workers in hazmat suits would spend all day walking around campus hosing down students. Some are forced to wear gas masks just to survive, while others, including the teachers, wear next to nothing as a choice. A gang known as the Squirrels terrorize the school and are led by an obese man with "Eat Broccoli" tattooed on his belly called Yoke. The women are called the Shemale Squirrelettes and spend their days beating up the plant workers or just out on general harassment campaigns. They're terrified of the boys' youth hockey team and the toxic Avenger who walks onto set and beats up Yoke before being told he's in the wrong movie. The place is directed by the money-hungry and just plain hungry Dean Okra, whose head of the science department has hair so tall that birds nest in it. Ever since Professor Holt was a child, she has been trying to develop a race of emotionless brain-dead humanoids to serve as her slaves. She began with gene splicing Denim before combining animal DNA with humans to create stop-motion monsters like the Flyboy and Reptile with a hairpiece. There's also a bulimic dolphin man and a room in the school filled with subhumanoids who take only 9 months to fully grow into an adult. They're mindless drones with a tendency to follow orders, and with the help of the squirrels have been integrated into the college campus. At this time, Roger still doesn't have a girlfriend and can barely even get the fairer sex to look at him despite all the push-ups he must do. He apparently has horrible body odor and considers it his duty to reveal the truth, so he goes around campus sticking his nose in everyone's business. Recently, Holt's subhumanoids, who look just like regular people, have been experiencing complete cellular meltdown during times of stress. They reduce into piles of green goo and then an ugly critter emerges, so Professor Holt catches them and brings them back to her lab. Roger watches as the squirrels then move on to taking a woman's baby from its pram and basically playing a game of volleyball with it. When one throws it high into the air, Roger makes a heroic save, but the mother doesn't even show any gratitude, and now he's a target of the squirrels. Back at his room, Roger finds a brochure for an experiment and it promises sex, so the loveless man enters hoping to get laid. Holt doesn't tell any of the participants what the test is actually about and just asks generic sperm bank questions like, "When's the last time you self-flagellated?" Roger is then brought to a room where he's offered a wide array of shrink wrappings but can't afford any of them, so must risk it with a single ply rubber. He's then blindfolded, and this is where Roger meets his eventual girlfriend Victoria, who was sent to service him by Holt. She watches the whole thing with the dean, as the whole experiment is to see how many times a subhumanoid can do it before it collapses from a sore coochie. Roger is the 65th man Vicky has serviced today, as they must hit her with a wet vac between sessions in Holt's pursuit of the ultimate subservient. She's tried to breed other subhumanoids called Melon and Pancake with some of the spliced creations, but they thought it was dinner time and ate them instead. They have an extra mouth in place of their belly buttons for no sane reason, and these horrifying things have whole lives of their own. Holt notices that Victoria seems to like Roger more than the others, which makes her angry because subhumanoids aren't meant to have any emotions. She chalks it up to another failure, just like the captain of the girls' basketball team, who ever since joining they've been on a winning streak. Roger watches her playing while thinking about finding Victoria again when witnessing another subhumanoid meltdown. The player attacks the referee, then collapses, and emerging from her belly mouth is the little mutant Jim Henson-looking creation. Holt immediately swoops in and scoops it up, so Roger finally decides to do a story about these things, since he is a reporter after all. His editor's assistant Diana is one of those natural subhumanoids and is the typist for all these stories that Roger brings in on tape. She whips it up in seconds, but the editor Janice shuts the idea down because she works for the power plant and covers up their secrets. She tells Roger to come back when his story is good enough to publish, but then gets on the phone to Big Power and says that a student is onto them. One day, while getting harassed by Yoke in the cafeteria and almost drowned in beer froth, Roger runs into Victoria. She's working as a janitor and gets a piece of glass embedded in her hand but doesn't react to it, as subhumanoids feel no pain. Roger doesn't pick up that she's strange and just begins dating the lab-grown woman with learning difficulties who's only like 9 months old. On their first date together, he's already twirling her around in the park like movie characters in love until he accidentally throws her headfirst into a tree. She assumes that's just part of being in love, so she returns the favor, but is much stronger than he is, so knocks Roger unconscious. Unable to wake him up, Vicky leaves him a letter saying that she enjoys spending time together, then returns to the lab. Inside, Holt is working tirelessly to create a vaccine to save her babies from having more of the titular subhumanoid meltdowns. She takes some blood from an already devolved subhumanoid, then shakes it around a bit, and now she has a single dose of the cure. However, Holt doesn't have any time to administer it before Okra arrives to demand the subhumanoids be delivered to the board of directors. He also has her send Victoria and Harvey to entertain the squirrels for all the hard work they're doing covering up the meltdowns. But they're actually the ones causing them, as Yoke forces Harvey to chew on glass and he transforms into one of the slimy green Furbies. It leaps on a plant worker, but he manages to capture it in a cooler before Holt can arrive with her little net. The dean gets angry because Vicky never showed up with Harvey to pleasure the squirrels and they aren't able to locate her. She went to visit Roger again, but Victoria still hasn't told her boyfriend that her life expectancy as a subhumanoid is shorter than most. Roger is deeply in love, but upon noticing the mouth on Vicky's stomach, which he somehow hadn't until now, he freaks out, so she runs off in tears. We spend an awfully long time following her jog back to the lab where she's captured by the squirrels but doesn't give them Roger's name. Okra is angry that this slave girl has been tainted despite the 65-man stress test earlier and orders her to be terminated. However, Holt refuses to execute her big-breasted baby, so the dean has them both tossed in the dungeon with the stop-motion creations. Roger has decided that he doesn't care if his girlfriend can kiss both his heads at the same time and goes looking for the mutant to apologize. He sneaks inside the lab and sees everything from the stop-motion creatures to the subhumanoids being sent off for various duties. Unable to find Victoria, he returns to Janice with everything she could possibly want in a story about the dean having a secret lab in the basement. But he still doesn't understand that this woman is covering for the suits in charge, so she shuts down his idea again. As he leaves, however, a janitor called Murray enters and has a meltdown in her office, but is able to strangle Janice before he devolves. He then hurls her out the window, where Roger witnesses his editor die, so he rushes back upstairs to catch the killer. The subhumanoid is now only a head that's somehow able to fly and chases Roger around the campus until he runs into the squirrels. They kick the crap out of him until seeing the little green monster and running away, but he isn't violent and is rather quite polite. He's a friend of Victoria's and wants to help Roger prevent her from having a total meltdown, but first they need to find her. They rally the degenerate students with guns to fight back against the dean, but they don't take Roger seriously at first. It's not until one of their own melts down into a slimy green Geodude do they get up in arms and agree to raid the power plant. For all the guns these students wield, they just let Roger lead the assault by punching and kicking guards while searching the place for his girlfriend. This is when, completely unrelated to anything else, a plant worker drops some radioactive waste and a wild squirrel eats it. That's why there was a furry kaiju attacking the school in the beginning, because this thing grows into a giant 300-foot monster called Tromi. It goes on a rampage, destroying both the plant and college, while everyone that we've seen up until this point flee for their lives. During this time, Roger and his raiding party defeat the gang members who stayed behind to defend the lab for whatever reason, and he knocks out the big boy Yoke. Okra is torturing Holt by cutting off her hair until she reveals the location of the cure to stop his slave labor from melting down. Before he cuts away enough to accidentally expose where she hid the vial, the destruction allows a stop-motion gargoyle to escape its cell. It rips off his head and eats it, while Holt escapes her cuffs somehow and runs out of the building before the place comes down. Roger finds Victoria and carries the 140 pounds of subhumanoid beef out of the school, where we've caught up to the beginning. She's begun to have a meltdown, so Roger needs to get the cure from the professor, but he's too busy documenting everything that happened for that Pulitzer Prize. Holt runs into Tromi outside, who thinks that she's his mother like all the other mutants, so picks her up hundreds of feet into the air. She orders it to put her down, so the squirrel drops her and she splats into a pile of sludge right beside Roger. He slaps the hell out of this actress, then receives the antidote before dropping Holt's head on the concrete, and that's the last we see her. The cure immediately halts Victoria's meltdown and she kisses Roger with her face mouth as help arrives to deal with the squirrel problem. It comes in the form of a helicopter carrying a giant nut that leads the planetary threat towards the pilot's mother-in-law's house. And the movie ends.